In this video, we're going to be reviewing solving linear equations. So before you attempt this, just make sure you're comfortable with combining like terms, distributing, and just manipulating an equation in general. Alright, so what do we mean when we say a linear equation? Basically the idea, it's called linear because if you were to graph it, it's a straight line, but how do you tell it it's a straight line? By just looking at the equation. Alright, if you have y equals, as long as it's just like an x, then it's going to be linear. So if I just put an x here, and it doesn't matter what else I have, then this is linear. As soon as I start doing other things to x, then it's no longer linear. So as soon as I take the same equation, but square x, this is no longer linear. Same equation, but square root x, that's no longer linear. That's the idea. When you look at an equation and the only thing you see happening with the x is just the x itself, then it's most likely linear. As soon as you see exponents or square roots or things like this, right, x is in the bottom of a denominator and things like that, most times those are not going to be linear. All right, so we're just looking at kind of basic things with x is when we're talking about linear equations. All right, how do we solve? We want to get the x by itself. So whenever you're looking at a linear equation, you recognize there's nothing weird happening with the x. You're going to simplify both sides, just kind of make them look as simple as possible. Then you get all the x terms to one side and all the non-x terms, which is normally just the numbers, to the other side. I combine like terms and simplify again. All right, there's kind of multiple things on both sides, and then you should just have to divide to get your final answer. All right, so here's an example of this. All right, first of all, I see that I just have kind of x and x, so this is linear, so I know this is linear, so I want to get all the x's to one side. Let's just say we're going to get the x's on the left. So this 5x over here is already on the left. I'll underline it. And we need to get this minus 8x from the right over to the left. So how are we going to do that? We're going to get rid of minus 8x. We're going to add 8x to both sides. And just to save time, I'm going to do two steps at once. All right, so that's kind of moving the x's to the left, but with the non-x's on the other side, which is the right. So this 4 is over already on the right. That's good. This minus 3 also doesn't have an x, so it needs to move to the right. So to do that, I'm going to add 3 to both sides. And it's fine to do both these steps at the same time. 5 plus 8 is 13. So now we have 13 x's on the left. Those cancel out. 4 plus 3 is 7. And those cancel out. So now this is exactly what we want every time we're solving a linear equation. Stuff with the x on the left, or one aside, stuff without the x on the other side. And like I said, now you just have to divide, get rid of that 13 that's being multiplied by dividing by 13, and I get x is 7 over 13. All right, and as soon as that x is all by itself on one side, that's how you know you've solved. There shouldn't be any x's on the other side of the equal sign. All right, in this example, it's just a little bit of simplifying you can do first. So whenever we have a number in front of parentheses, you have to remember you distribute this into both terms. Here we just have this little minus sign, which is technically like a minus 1. We gotta make sure we distribute that as well. So our next line is just gonna be 6x plus 3. This 4 is not doing anything yet. Minus 5x. When this negative 1 distributes to the negative 2, it comes plus 2. All right, and again, we want to get all the x's on one side. So we did on the last one. Let's do it again. All right, we want the x terms on the left. So I need to move this over here by adding 5x to both sides. All the non-x terms. Well, there's already 2 on the right. We're going to move this third one, this number 3, to the right. So I'm going to do that by subtracting 3 from both sides. So I have 6x plus 5x on the left. On the right, I have 4 plus 2 minus 3. Combining my terms, I get 11x. 6 minus 3 is 3. And again, your last step should pretty much always just be dividing. So same steps, we just had to do a bit of simplifying first in this example. All right, so this is the big example. Once we start throwing in fractions, you can solve this the same way. So you could add this non-x term over here and then get rid of this 1/2. You can do it that way. You just have to be working with fractions the whole time. I prefer to get rid of the fractions as early as possible. So instead of like moving things around first, I'm just going to do simplifying step first. I always start with the biggest number in the denominator. So in this case, it's 4. I know if I multiply a fraction by the bottom of the fraction, those things kind of cancel out and I just get whatever's on the top. So if I multiply everything on both sides by 4, 4 times 1/2 is going to be 4 over 2. I just multiply. Remember, 4 is 4 over 1 x. But when 4 over 1 times 3 over 4, the 4's cancel. I'm just going to get 3. And Again, this is 4/1 becomes 4/3. All right, I can simplify a bit. 4 divided by 2 is just 2. So make sure you're always trying to, I don't know where my mouse is. Make sure you're always trying to simplify fractions whenever they pop up. All right, can you make the numbers smaller, that type of thing. In this case, we can. This is 2x minus 3 equals 4/3. I just have one more fraction to get rid of, so now I'm just going to multiply everything by 3. 6x minus 9. And again, here, 4/3 times 3, they cancel out and I get 4. All right, so there's 2 steps of just simplifying, kind of getting rid of fractions. Not necessary steps, but it's the way I prefer to solve equations, and it's more helpful when the denominators and things get a lot more complicated, so it's a good tool to have. Now I'm going to add 9 to both sides to move the numbers to the other side, and then divide by 6 to get x all by itself. And then don't rewrite this fraction as 2 1/6. Right, don't do that. I just leave it as one single fraction. Now here's the one for you to try on your own. Go ahead and solve this linear equation for x. All right, I'll show you the answer in 3, 2, 1. And here's the solution. All right, so make sure you distribute that -2 in and move the numbers to the right, the x's to the left. We did that for every single one of these examples. We moved the x's to the left, but I could have just as easily moved the x's to the right and the numbers on the left, divide, and get x by itself. All right, so go ahead and practice solving linear equations and get ready for the skill check.